who's the CEO of Indian Express Online Media. Prior to joining the Indian Express Group, Sanjay was with economictimes.com for over 12 years as the business head, where he conceptualized and launched ET Prime. Welcome, Sanjay.
Thanks, Hemant. Thanks for having me here.
Our next panelist, Arjit Chatterjee, Chief Strategy Officer at NDTV. Arjit has been a part of the core team at NDTV Convergence, the group's digital business, for the last 10 years. Welcome to the panel, Arjit.
Thanks, Hemant. Lovely to be here.
And our final panelist, Arjun Satya, the co-founder for M360 at Times Internet. Arjun was also part of the founding team at Columbia in 2014. He has hands-on experience in building and scaling ad tech products, recommender systems, and SaaS platforms. Welcome, Satya.
Thank you, Hemant. Happy to be here.
So one of the big change that has happened, especially in the last 10 months, has been the dawn of digital. I think what demonetization could not do, COVID did for digital payments. The same happened to OTT players and definitely for the online news sites. Queries floating all over the search and video content offering crazy benchmarks to the news publishers. The second part which happened and was interesting was that people realized the value of credible source of news and information. In fact, I always say this, that we were not just fighting a pandemic, we were fighting an infodemic. Today, the online news business in India is stacked up with a bunch of opportunities and challenges. I speak with digital publishers, editors, marketers, and product managers on a regular basis. And the only commonality in these conversations is their constant struggle for revenues. The coming year, 21-22, looks to me as a year of cautious optimism. So without wasting any further time, let me get going and understand from our esteemed panelists their views on some of the challenges and opportunities around monetization in financial year 21-22 in their respective businesses, and what are their biggest bets in driving revenue growth for their organizations. We can start with you, Sanjay.
Thanks, Hemant. I think you made a very valid point that most digital publishers are challenged by the revenue models that we operate in, and how do we kind of grow those revenues? How do we improve our margins? Is something that we are all kind of struggling with. The challenge is that in this industry. The supply side on the advertising piece, especially, keeps growing because everybody has turned into an advertiser today. And as you increase the supply and with demand really not catching up, or demand actually, catching up at a slower pace, the prices that you're able to get for your inventory keep dropping. I think that's the basic challenge that this industry operates. The raw material that we work with is largely people, and people costs tend to go up. So while technology is there and technology costs keep coming down, but it's the people cost that keeps going up. And as a result, what we see is that publishers are always challenged at the bottom line level about how to sustain this business. Fortunately, for most traditional media companies, you had the luxury of your traditional business model supporting you both with content and resources. But I think what the pandemic did was it has really put the traditional business model on a spin, and suddenly the digital media now is not really is expected to support itself and become profitable in its own right, and that's where the challenge starts. The good thing is that there are multiple alternate ways to monetize the digital publishing business. Subscription is one of them. Content marketing is another, which people have been trying. Content commerce is another opportunity, and of course a lot of IPs and events, etc. And we've seen this happening in US and Europe, where all publishers are actually opting for either a few of these or all of these to create a sustainable business model. And I don't think India is going to be any different. Uh, I joined Express about 2 years back, and we were very clear that an purely ad-led model is not going to be sustainable, and we need to kind of diversify our revenues. And we started on subscriptions. We started increasing our play on the content marketing piece. We also invested in certain IPs. And as a result, what happened was this year we are actually seeing a major turnaround for our business because we are no longer just reliant on advertising. And I think most publishers will probably move in that same direction.
Thank you, Sanjay, for your views. I'll move to Arijit. Arijit, NDTV convergence has always, I would say, uh, been thought leaders in the category, and there are so many firsts which we have all witnessed, and you guys have inspired so many in the way you have managed your online news media business. So I would want you to share your views on some of the challenges and opportunities the way you see in the coming years and months.
Firstly, thank you so much, Hemant. Very nice of you to say these kind words. Um, and I think all credit really goes to a fantastic team that keeps working on it. Longevity of the team has been one of the key things. Actually, it's interesting what Sanjay said that people have had the luxury of traditional media houses have had the luxury of having very robust business models on the traditional media, and therefore probably started late on kind of figuring out um, the digital as a viable business model. I think that's, and when you talk about first set convergence at NDTV digital, I think that's something, knock on wood, we kind of got right very early. And I think that was the biggest advantage that we had. We realized way back in 2006 or seven, and just setting up convergence as a separate company, kind of to drive the digital mandate. I think the group kind of realized very early that this was where the future was going to be, and especially on the traditional media, we're in the English news business, right? And the Hindi news business, and we know how small that pie can be, driven by Bach, which is completely discredited right now. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game over there. So what we've done with convergence has always been profitability has been the mantra. We have not gone crazy over the years. Very tempting. We've had a lot of our competitors and peers. Sanjay was at ET for times in the longest time. Like very tempting to hear the acquisitions and the money that they were spending on rights, etc. But I think we kind of kept our heads down to really build on the basics of great content, good technology, and great user experience, while kind of maintaining a premium audience. I think that's helped us. As Sanjay said, yes, the future um, is tough, but I also think it brings a lot of opportunity. Uh, and you spoke about the pandemic. I think if there's anything good that's come out of the pandemic has been um, the the fact that digitization slash digital um, properties have just become way more important to advertisers, and I think we see that all the time. We've been having conversations with some of the top marketers and brand heads and agency heads. And you see a difference in the language. Earlier it used to be, sure, I'll take television. I talk from a television perspective. I said, sure, we take television, and then it'll be great to have some digital. You'll be amazed at how many people now say, sure, let's have a digital first approach, and then let's build in television as an amplifier of what you're doing on digital. The very fact that social media slash the internet allows two-way conversations, allows brands slash advertisers and agencies to measure the efficacy of their spends, in a way more efficient manner. I think these are things that will totally help move a lot more money into digital. We're still scratching the surface from percentage points. I mean, you guys know the data. No need to get in numbers, but we would be what 11% of all advertising. Any mature market out there is in the high 30s already. The West, US, UK, digital has overtaken television. So I think digital media, if done right, we're in a good space to get the eyeballs. But as long as we all keep focusing on the fact that nothing can compensate for good content, good user experience, and good technology. You can do whatever you want. If you don't get these three things right, the revenue will follow. I'm a strong believer in that. The advertising revenue will follow. So that's the short of it.
Thank you, Arjit, for sharing your views. Quickly moving you on to you, Arjun. You have been quite instrumental in creating an ecosystem in the back of tech and contributing significantly into the ad tech space in the country. What are your views on the challenges and opportunities for online news publishers when it comes to monetization?
So yeah, Hemant, I think I'll resonate with all you, Arjit, and Sanjay have said that there's a need to diversify revenue, whether not just in advertising, but also even if you look at Times Internet, so we do ads, we do subscription, we do content commerce, content marketing, and even now with M360 also selling the software of publishing and monetization as well. So I think for traditional media houses, because they are in a vantage point to have all these like first step into all these direction to build different kind of revenue streams. So that's where like a digital media house or a large digital media house is able to sustain. And if we talk about the ads business itself, I think like while pandemic was a downside for everyone, and still advertising is the larger revenue share for every media house that we can imagine in India. There were downfalls in few sectors, but there was definitely an uptick in sectors like ed tech or gaming or something equivalent to that. So while there was a lesser spends from advertisers and agencies in travel, hospitality, there was an uptick in other sectors as well. So building all these capabilities in-house or partnering with a platform that gives you all these capabilities of cutting edge ad tech or data management platform and everything around it, you invariably end up in a media planning discussion in all major brands and agencies in India. So that way you can garner much more, you are much more safeguarded with any downfall in particular sector or an uptick in particular sector. And talking about 2021, this is a very, very like every publisher is circumspect with what will happen with third-party cookie being discontinued. There's not a lot of literature available that what will happen post that. So that's where I think the importance of first-party data will come into the picture, that how you have garnered that data, packaged that data, and provided that to your branding solutions. So I think that's one way. And even if we talk about iOS, there's a default opt-out for IDFAs as well. So like the ad tech industry has to be at the cutting edge and cater to more first-party based solution, whether it is first-party data, contextual offerings, and things like that. So because like if you compare news media with social media, why walled gardens are thriving even in a pandemic year and post-pandemic duration as well, is that they have all these capabilities built in, they have the distribution in place, they have the product in place, they have a seamless UX of like advertising gelling with the content and the entire experience on those platforms. So news media can best do is to keep a close watch in terms of what is happening in terms of advertising, and then just partner with such platforms or third-party solution or build those capabilities internally to offer all those offerings of first-party data, contextual, and things like that, and then package them to your via your sales team. So it's all about being at the cutting edge. And if you are not doing all of this, so we are seeing that a lot of top journalists are leaving the media organizations and starting their own newsletter on something like a Substack, or launching their own media organization for themselves, because that way they are commanding much more control over their audience. And then with ease of subscriptions, they are able to like basically draw a good enough salary for that small media company. So I think it's all about having diversified revenue stream and being at the cutting edge of what technology has to offer on those particular revenue stream. I think that's the only way to sort of tackle all of this.
So Arjun, completely agree with you, and that is what Sanjay and Arjit have also kind of stated in their conversations. That one of the most important thing for a news publisher today, and I was also watching the keynote, and diversified portfolio is one important thing. I believe the re-emphasis on content, the premiumness of content, originality of content, I think so. It's not just, and it's also what the ecosystem is demanding today. So if you look at the Google, if you look at the new guidelines where Google released in December, the entire emphasis is on originality of content. If you look at the Facebook instant article sessions, which have been happening since the last week, 10 days, the whole focus is on originality of content. And one of the important points made by many in the recent past is the fact that if your content cannot fetch you money from consumers' wallet, then you have to rethink about your strategy. The other important point, which we have been discussing, and Sanjay and I in the other panel also later, a lot of emphasis is what you mentioned about first-party data. So I think so it is very imperative when we talk about investments in technology, data analytics. I think so a lot of content creation also today is driven by your understanding. So whether it is content, investment in content, technology, distribution, marketing, how well do we know our customers? And I think so that's a journey as online news publishers, some of us have taken, many of us have to follow. So it brings me now to another interesting facet of our discussion. So we have seen that during lockdowns and other restrictions, what it has done, it has broken a lot of old habits and created new ones. And this year is going to be very critical because we'll discover how fundamental those changes have been, which each of us in our own pace and agility have been trying to make. And this will also be a year of economic reshaping, with most of the publishers leaning into revenues from subscription, transaction, and content for brand solutions. Very, very important. And we are seeing live examples around us. And that's going to be the next part of our discussion today. And, I'll quickly request Sanjay, you have been, working on the paid subscription model since a long time now, both at Economic Times and now with Indian Express, and I could sense, optimism from your end during our past conversations, and I would love you to share your journey and some of your key learnings with a lot of us here, who could also get inspired and take a plunge into paid subscription model.
Thanks, Emma. So I think you're quite right that subscription. So let me start with a small example. Let's say you have a reader who's very loyal to you, who comes very regularly to you, right? And let's assume he comes to you every day, gives you 2 page views. So that's about 60 page views from a reader, right? In a month. And now you multiply it by 12, you have about 720 page views from that reader. Let's assume 1,000, because of convenience of calculations, that you get 1,000 page views from this reader. Given the CPM rates that we have, right, assuming an RPM of $100, you make 100 rupees from that reader, from advertising today. Now, juxtapose that with, if he's a loyal reader, of course, he's most likely to convert to a subscription. And if you're selling a subscription at, let's say, 1,000 rupees, then you're making 10x more money by getting this user into a subscription environment from an ad-led environment. And on top of it, you now know this user so much better. So one, because he's a transacting customer, from an advertiser's point of view, he's more valuable. He's probably top of the pyramid, right? Second, you know a lot more about him in terms of his details, because a customer who trusts you, who's willing to pay to you, will probably also share a lot more data with you about what his preferences are, what his likes are. You can track all of that. So you can probably, even from an advertising perspective, monetize him much better. Which means you don't have to show him ads on all the 1,000 pages that he consumes. You can actually just show him 20 ads or 40 ads in a year and still create as much value from advertising by creating a much lower level of dissonance with this user. So I think that's what the crux of why subscription is such a strong phenomena and why everybody is looking at it so closely. because that's the crux of it. It solves everybody's problem. Today, with falling yields, what publishers are doing, they're pasting more ads on the same page. They're trying to get more intrusive ads because performance keeps dropping. As you keep increasing the ad edit ratio, you keep lowering the consumer experience. So consumer is unhappy because you are throwing ads at him. You're throwing ads which make absolutely no sense to him. To a teenager, you are throwing maybe diaper ads because you don't have the data, you don't have the ability to target. And because prices are low, and you're buying via programmatic or whatever, the data is available. It's not accurate and precise. So everybody's unhappy. You are unhappy as a publisher. You're not making money. The consumer is unhappy because he's getting a plethora of ads, and the advertiser is unhappy because he's not getting a response, and therefore he believes that the prices should actually come down. So it's a downward spiral. Now, when you move to subscriptions, you are actually able to reverse the spiral, improve consumer experience, improve ad targeting, and improve your revenues. And that's where subscription becomes very powerful. But having said that, while the model is beautiful, years we've been chasing, growth in the reach model, because that's what advertisers wanted. And we're chasing page views. We haven't really bothered to know our customers very well. And therefore, when you decide suddenly to move from an advertising-led model to a subscription-led model, you face a lot of challenges. It starts with your newsroom. You always said, okay, I need to protect my core business. And therefore, it was always print first or TV first, and digital became secondary. Even if digital was at par, you still tended to hold your best stories for the cash cow, which was generating bulk of your revenues. So digital was always the second preferred medium and not the first preferred medium. So you need to change that culture, because if you are now going to have paying customers, if my print customer pays $1,000 and my digital customer pays $1,000, how can I discriminate between the two? So my newsroom strategy has to change. Second, the metrics you measure. It's always been about reach and frequency. How many page views, how many ad views, viewability. The entire focus of the digital business has been around those metrics, because that's where your money was coming from. Now, certainly, what is important from a subscription point of view, what is the loyal base of readers do you have? How many people come to you very frequently? Because those are the people who are going to kind of ultimately convert into subscriptions. So you have a very heavy dependence on social media and search, which send you lots and lots of users. But the fact of the matter is, those users circulate between different brands and they're not loyal to anyone. They're searching for something, whichever site comes up in the social media or on the search tends to get that traffic, and therefore they are not loyal to your brand and to your journalism. So how do you change that journey? How do you identify people who are loyal? How do you build loyalty? I think nobody's really paid heed to that, and that's the second important part. Third important part is, your customer and your consumer were two different entities in the advertising model. Your customer was the guys who were spending the money on advertising, and your consumer was who was reading your content. And basically, you got the money from the advertisers to show the ads to the consumers, and there was a dichotomy in that model. So you were always divided in, who are you catering to, who's more important to you, and somewhere you will probably compromise on both ends. Now, as your consumer and customer become one, I think that dilemma will go away. And that's the other challenge that you have to address. How do you change your focus from a product-centric, reach-centric goals, and where you've trained your people over the last 20 years to, focus on trending stories, popular stories, rather than stories that will convert people from being irregular to regular, or maybe from being one-time users to repeat users, and from repeat users to loyal readers. So I think there's a big shift required. It's not easy. It's going to take time, and I think anybody who moves into subscription will see very quick initial gains, because your most loyal readers will convert. But I've spoken to a lot of publishers, and I've looked at data across at least 2 or 3 sites where I had access. I think the base of loyal readers that all digital publishers have is a very small percentage of their total readers. And even in if you look at the New York Times, which has made a success of subscriptions, the subscriber base is just 4% of their total reach, right? And that too after being in the subscription game for such a long time. So it's not easy. It's a tough call, but given the multiplier it creates in terms of average revenue per user, I think it's a very, very viable business model. I think that's largely from my side.
It's a great insight, Sanjay. Thank you so much. And Arjit, now quickly moving on to you, we also have a viewer question, which is about NDTV's revenues in terms of percentage being the highest in the industry today. Talking in terms of online digital media industry as a percentage of the overall business. And also, what really is interesting is the manner in which you have been able to, leverage your overall content strategy in terms of some of your key partnerships with Facebook, Google. We all know about your large native advertising deal with Taboola, and most interestingly, NDTV Shopping. Uh, so when I spoke about aspects with regard to revenues coming from subscription, transaction, content for brand solutions, etc., you guys seem to be doing it right across all these three key aspects. We would all love to hear what's the thinking and how do you get it right?
Well, I think right's too strong a word. Let's just say we keep trying, and we try really hard to ensure that. I think Sanjay touched about a good point of balancing content and revenue, and I think that's something that's actually at the core of our business strategy. Um, there is absolutely no point in having gunning for revenue at the cost of user experience or usage, because guess what? Your business is at the end of the day built on users, as Sanjay said. Um, and I think what we've done well over the years, knock on wood, is drive that thin balance, very, very fine balance between product, editorial, and revenue, of course. As far as the partnerships with, with Taboola, which is the biggest in Asia, and to be fair, they're great partners. Knock on wood is our sixth, seventh year of our partnership. With Facebook and Google, we have great partnerships. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that ultimately all platforms want good, credible, trusted content on their platforms, right? I mean, there was a time when everybody said, oh, every news media outlet is going to die because Twitter is going to eat your lunch. That's not happened. Twitter is there. The media companies seem to be are all around, and guess what? They're actually great allies. We feed off each other as well, right? I mean, we use Twitter to get our news out, to get their reach. They use us to make sure they are giving their users best content, trusted content. So I think that's been the key. One of the other things that we started really early and we continue to build, and I think you touched on that point, is brand solutions or content solutions, as we call it, right? I think advertising as we know it is over. If the whole pre-roll, mid-roll, let's run some banner advertising, etc., is pretty much done. Sure, you will have your high impact takeovers, etc., that a brand launching a car or a new phone launching will do. But otherwise, it's all going to come down to how do you help the brand tell a story? How do you kind of bring about an entire narrative that's not your narrative, but it's basically telling the brand, hey, you have a story, you have a brand ethos. Here's a message you want to get across. I have all these touch points across the board, whether it's my owned and operated platforms, it's my social media reach, etc. Let us work together to kind of create content, curate it for you, and then take that story to people. I think that's going to be the cornerstone of all large marketing partnerships or advertising moving forward. In addition to some of the brand ads, etc. The other thing we talk about subscription, and Sanjay made a great point. New York Times, for all its gazillion dollars from subscription, is 4%. One thing I think that people don't talk about is how micropayments will play out. Uh, at the end of the day, how many subscriptions slash wallets is someone going to have? Sure, we are all in the industry. We probably are outliers. We'll probably have 4 or 5 tops, right? If everybody gets into subscription, I don't see the average Indian user subscribing to more than one, maybe at most 2 premium news outlets, right? And that's where he wants to get his content. And look at the other way discoverability is going. 50% of all content today we consume is because somebody recommended either on our platform, our social feed, our WhatsApp, our family chats, etc. And if everybody starts putting out a paywall, no one's going to sign up, because I'm not going to go through all that pain to kind of just read one story because Sanjay's done a great story on the Indian Express. I want to read that for that one story, but I don't want to subscribe to it, right? So I think micropayments will be a big, big driver of subscription. Again, as Sanjay said, our brand lover or brand loyal audience, as you call it, affinity audiences, probably the top 3-4%. And then you have that whole long tail of the next 50-60 who are willing to pay that. India is a country of chota recharge, right? You want to do that little recharge, little top up, pay a little amount and move on. So I think that's going to be another subset of subscription and transactions that will be a big play in this market. It's going to be an India specific phenomenon that's going to really take off. I think that's our thought process as well.
Thank you, Arijit. And I must say on this, it brings back to me my memories in telecom. India is the largest microtransaction economy in the world, with an average prepaid user recharging his prepaid wallet 3 to 4 times in a month, and with an average balance of 10 to 15 rupees at any given point of time. And here's, we'll conclude with you, Arjun. Quick words from you on some of the technology trends which you believe would drive the growth and opportunities in monetization for online publishers like us in 2021 and beyond. Some quick words from you.
Yeah, so I think like I'll just concur with Arijit's point that micro transaction is something that can definitely take off for India. While sometimes it's an incidental revenue for online publishers. So let's say a particular story picked up in a month or a two, and then you got a spike of microtransaction happening for that particular story. But I still believe that there are ways to create a seamless experience for the user to do microtransaction and yet have like a sustained revenue through it. So definitely this is a space to watch out. In terms of advertising, again, lion's share of revenue for all the publishers comes from advertising still. So I think I'll just resonate with what all I have said right till now, that first party data, emphasis on first party data, building solutions around your contextual content. So that's where the authoritativeness of your content comes into the picture. What Google is also mentioning in their recent events as well. So those two are the very key driving factor. And the thirdly, I think new media or new age media is something that has to be explored a lot with the advent of newsletters or even podcasts. For that matter, you are engaging with your audience in some other dimension altogether. So if you're able to tailor advertising solutions for those media channels as well, that is also a viable solution.
Thank you so much for being such a wonderful panelist, Arijit, Sanjay, and Satya. Arjun, thank you so much, and wishing you all the very best for the coming year, 21-22, and see you soon, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Hemant. Thanks so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.